Without any warning, I got the news that my mother-in-law had passed away. Naturally, I wanted to attend the funeral, but when I mentioned it to my husband, he shouted at me, "Don't you dare come, you got it." Confused, I asked, "What are you talking about? She's passed away. What kind of daughter-in-law wouldn't go to the funeral?" He angrily replied, "My mom hated you. Don't even think about showing up. You'll be a nuisance." Although my relationship with my mother-in-law wasn't great, she was still gone. Not going to her funeral, as her daughter-in-law, felt completely disrespectful. Ignoring my husband's harsh words, I went to the funeral home, which was a bit far away. When I arrived, I saw my husband leading the funeral ceremony. I was shocked. Wait, what's going on here? Whose funeral is this? What I discovered next was a truth that was hard to accept. My name is Sophia. I'm 30 years old, and I've been married to my husband, William, for 3 years. Things were good in the beginning, but not anymore. I won't sugarcoat it. I'm unhappy with my marriage now, and it's mostly because of my husband. When we got married, I became a housewife because William asked me to quit my job and stay home. Since I didn't have a particular passion for my office job, I agreed and left work, but that turned out to be a mistake. In the first year of marriage, things were okay, but in the second year, things started going downhill. At first, I received $11,000 a month from William for living expenses. Then, out of nowhere, it was cut down to $500. I confronted him, saying, "William, it's impossible to make ends meet with just $500. Why did you cut it down?" He coldly responded, "I'm already covering the rent. You only need to handle the utilities and groceries, right?" I tried explaining, even for basic things like food and household items, $500 isn't enough, especially when you include utility bills. He snapped back, "You're living off my money, so figure it out." He refused to budge, so I was forced to stretch that $500, but no matter how hard I tried, it just wasn't enough. My husband eats more than the average person, which makes managing the household budget even harder. After a year of living off my savings, I watched my bank balance shrink because I wasn't earning any income. Each time I checked, the number got smaller, and a deep sense of fear grew inside me. I kept thinking, what will happen when this account hits zero? No matter how hard I tried, $500 a month just wasn't enough, and William didn't seem willing to increase the household budget. I felt stuck. That's when I decided it was time to go back to work, even if it was just part-time. I figured I could make around $800 to $900 a month. That extra money would definitely help. That night, I brought up the idea with William, but he immediately recoiled. "Work? You can't be serious." "No way," he said. "Why not?" I asked. "It would give us some breathing room. Life is tough, and I'm struggling to manage everything." "If life is hard, it's because you're bad at budgeting. It's your fault," he snapped. "I've done all I can." His dismissive attitude made my anger boil over. Before I knew it, I was shouting, "Enough is enough. You're the one who wanted me to be a housewife. How can anyone make ends meet with just $500? Shut up. Stop blaming others, you loser," he yelled, shoving me aside before storming out of the room. I collapsed to the floor, crying uncontrollably. Why is this happening? All I ever wanted was a peaceful married life. I always felt like I needed to talk to someone, but my parents live far away, so visiting them isn't easy. I couldn't keep these worries to myself anymore. As for my in-laws, they live only an hour away, but William doesn't get along with them, so we've had no contact since we got married. Talking to them wasn't an option either. I felt completely alone. After getting married, I moved closer to my husband's workplace, which made it difficult and expensive to meet up with my old co-workers. As for my friends back home, I couldn't imagine how they'd react if I tried to reconnect, so I found myself living in fear of my own husband. Then, things began to change. Recently, my husband started spending less time at home. He began working late and going on more business trips, so he was rarely home for dinner. Because of this, I didn't need to buy as many groceries. which made it easier to stretch the $500 he gave me each month. I also started working from home, earning about $700 a month. This gave me a bit more independence, and I actually started enjoying life more when he wasn't around. For the past year, this has been my routine. Recently, though, my husband has been busier than ever and barely comes home. When he does, he treats me horribly, shouting insults. On top of that, he stopped giving me any money for living expenses. Then one day, something unexpected happened. My husband came home from work looking really shaken. Without even pausing, he blurted out, "My mom is dead." I was stunned. "Wait, what? Are you joking?" He shouted back, "Why would I lie about something like this?" I was still in disbelief, but your mom was so young. "I'll go to the funeral the day after tomorrow. You stay here," my husband said unexpectedly. Caught off guard, I blurted out, "What do you mean? Why would you go alone to your mother's funeral? She's my mother-in-law too." He replied coldly, "That doesn't matter. I'm enough for my mom's funeral." "Are you serious? I don't understand your reasoning," I said, feeling my frustration grow. His impatience was clear as he snapped, "Just don't come to the funeral. Got it?" "What kind of daughter-in-law doesn't attend her mother-in-law's funeral?" I shot back. "Mom hated you," he yelled, "so even if you came, my deceased mom wouldn't be happy." I was stunned. My chest hurt at the harsh truth. Seeing my reaction, my husband sighed in annoyance. "If mom hated you, that feels the same. Your presence would just make everyone uncomfortable." "Fine, I get it," I replied, feeling pressured. "Just stop. I won't come to the funeral." All I could do was nod. 2 days later, early in the morning, my husband hurriedly got ready. As he went to the bathroom, I picked up his discarded pajamas and noticed his phone left open on the table. It looked like he was checking the venue for today's funeral. The driving directions on the screen showed a place about a 40-minute drive from home. Something felt off. "Wait, that direction isn't toward his family's home," I thought. "It should take at least an hour and a half to get there. Why would they choose a location so far away?" Lost in thought, my husband returned and I quickly left, making sure he didn't see I had checked his phone. He said, "I'm leaving," and walked out the door. Still uneasy, I decided to go to my mother-in-law's funeral anyway. When I arrived, I was shocked to see unfamiliar faces filling the family and staff seats, and there was my husband, giving a speech as the chief mourner. "Thank you all for gathering here today in honor of my wife." "What is this? My wife, Riley?" William was shedding tears, pretending to be a grieving husband. Normally, I confront him right away, but I didn't want to disrupt the solemn atmosphere. Just then, I overheard some women behind me talking. "Did you hear? The chief mourner is divorced." "Really? He seems so stable." "Yeah, his previous wife was a handful. She left him with a huge debt, then filed for divorce and just left. They say he met his current wife soon after, even knowing she was sick and wouldn't live long. But it's a love story, right?" Hearing this twisted version of events made my blood boil. I needed to confirm what I was hearing, so I checked and discovered that our divorce had been finalized about 6 months ago. William probably met his now sick wife soon after and married her. The reason he hardly came home was that he was living a newlywed life with her. I realized he had me removed from the family register and married another woman behind my back. I felt a surge of anger. Enough was enough. It was time for revenge. I hailed a taxi and headed straight to my mother-in-law's house, where I suspected she might be. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell, and my lively mother-in-law appeared. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Oh, Sophia, is that you? Long time no see." "You look well," I replied. "You look good too." I came unannounced, but there's something urgent I need to talk to you about. "What is it?" she asked. I told her everything, how I had been mistreated by William, how I wasn't getting enough money for living expenses, and that he had already divorced me. As I spoke, tears welled up, and I began to sob. My mother-in-law gently rubbed my back to comfort me. "I'm so sorry you've had to go through all this," she said. "My idiot son, please forgive me." "It's okay," I should apologize for showing up like this. Why didn't you come to me sooner? William told me you didn't like me. Wait, what? That's when it hit me. My husband had deliberately kept us apart. He probably thought it would be troublesome if we got along, especially if things went against his plans. I also learned that he had asked his family for financial help multiple times, blaming it all on me, saying things like, Sophia is sick and needs money, when I was neither sick nor unable to work. It was all William's doing. Now that I knew the truth, I had nothing to fear. I told my mother-in-law about my plan for revenge and returned to the funeral. Even though it had already ended, a few people were still around. I approached one of the guests. Excuse me, do you know where the deceased family lies? I couldn't make it to the funeral, and I want to bring some flowers later. Pretending to be an acquaintance, I managed to get the address of my husband's mistress' family home. The next day, I took some funeral flowers and headed there. When I rang the doorbell, a woman who looked worn and weary, likely from the grief of losing her daughter, and said it was probably the mistress' mother. I introduced myself as a friend and was invited inside. As we walked to the room with the family auteur, I saw my husband there. Sophia, what are you doing here? He blurted out, quickly covering his mouth when he realized what he said. The mistress' father turned to William, demanding to know what was going on. That's when I let it all out. I'm sorry for lying, but I am this man's ex-wife. Ex-wife? Why would she be here? Your daughter and I were both deceived by this man. I found out just yesterday at Riley's funeral that I was divorced. What? What do you mean? He told me it was my mother-in-law's funeral and told me not to come. I suspected something was off, so I followed him, only to find out it was the funeral of his new wife. William, what's the meaning of this? Riley's father's furious voice made William's face go pale as he looked down. The atmosphere, once filled with sorrow, shifted dramatically as Riley's father's face turned red with anger, his body trembling. In the midst of this, I prepared for my final act of revenge. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Riley's mother went to answer it. When she returned, she was accompanied by my mother-in-law. Sweat was pouring down William's forehead. He looked visibly shaken as my mother-in-law confronted him. What do you think you're doing? Causing trouble for others. Pay back the money you borrow from us right now and don't you dare blame Sophia. Ma'am, this isn't the time. It's exactly the right time. You owe Sophia and your parents an apology. Do you even understand what you've done? Declaring me dead and removing Sophia from the family registry. That's being disrespectful. Can we talk about this later? He pleaded. This is the right place. It wouldn't be fair to the other woman or your parents if I didn't speak up. I'm here to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are. Riley's father grabbed William by the collar and shouted, You've got to be kidding. William, looking terrified, started to cry. It turned out he had lied to Riley's father about needing money for Riley and had borrowed from him instead. Under questioning, it was revealed that he had gambled all the money away. In the end, William was kicked out of Riley's house and faced legal actions. Ignoring his tears, I turned my back and started to walk away with my mother-in-law. Just then, a desperate voice called out from behind, Sophia, wait. I turned around slowly. What? I'm really sorry. Can we start over? Excuse me, if you don't help, I'll be sued. Don't worry, I plan on suing you too. What? I had already made up my mind. After all the unjust treatment and being served fake divorce papers, I would definitely take legal action against him. Please forgive me. Fuming, I unleashed my feelings on my husband. Do you think saying sorry would make everything okay? Do you even understand what you've done? Filing for divorce without telling me is a legal issue. Your apologies are worthless because you've been lying and asking for financial support. Utterly worthless. Sophia, wait. Quiet. Do you have any idea how many people you've hurt with your actions? What you've done isn't easily forgivable. Even a lifetime of making amends won't be enough. So from now on, stay out of my life. If you show up again, I won't hesitate to ruin you. My mother-in-law's reassuring hand on my back gave me strength. almost bringing me to tears. After everything, William ended up paying back the $10,000 he borrowed from Riley's father in one lump sum. On top of that, he had to pay me alimony and a fine for forgery. With a salary that was never that high to begin with, the financial blow hit him hard. He had to go into debt just to cover the alimony, and now he was receiving collection calls at work. It was only a matter of time before he lost his job. As for me, I returned to my old job right after the divorce, and now I'm living in an apartment near my workplace and enjoying peaceful days. I've been meeting with my mother-in-law regularly, updating each other on our lives, and our relationship has deepened even more since then. She stood by me as we took a stand against her own son, and I plan to cherish her as a second mother from here on out.